Hey, we're back. Made it through another day. I think this is our third one, so good work. Today is on intensity and some of the basic movements that we do in CrossFit. When we talk about intensity, there's a lot of different types of intensity that people say, oh, it was so awful that I sweated a lot, or I threw up, or I felt dizzy, or those can all be measures of intensity. But what it is with those is those are all relative intensity, so they're perceived or subjective. So depending on what is intense for you and what is intense for me, that might be something completely different. So your intensity might be, I just ran 1.5 miles as fast as I could, and that was pretty intense, but I'm okay, and I might die at that and be like, that was the most intense thing ever. So that's not a really good measure. So how we measure intensity is absolute intensity. And what absolute intensity is it's measurable and it's objective. So how much weight did you move, how far did you move it, and how long did it take you? And that's actually how we measure horsepower. So every single workout we do, we could measure horsepower with it. And that shows us how hard you were actually working. So over time, we can see that you're actually working harder over time by that calculation. So that's why we measure results the way we do, because it's not subjective. It's not a matter of, oh, that was pretty easy this time because you're in better shape. Now we can actually say that your power and your performance has moved up.
In CrossFit, they talk about the 9 fundamental movements, and it pretty much just goes up and through a hierarchy of movements. When we start individuals or athletes that walk into our gym, we start out with very basic movements, because it's these movements that are key to being better at the movements that are farther up in the hierarchy. So air squat is the most important skill that you're probably going to learn here at CrossFit Ground Up, or probably any CrossFit gym. The shoulder press, and then the deadlift. And we will go over these in our exercise demo videos.
We did last time.
Like we did last time?
Mm-hmm.
We did. We did. Front squat, the push press, and the medicine ball deadlift. And then at the top, the lifts are a little bit more difficult, involve a little bit more mobility. Overhead squat, the push jerk, and the sumo deadlift high pull.
Okay, and in all of these movements, this is what we want to make sure that we're keeping in. I need to make sure I'm in the camera. Make sure that we're doing first. All of these movements, we need to establish technique first. You need to make sure that you are moving correctly and biomechanically correctly to avoid injury before we move on from there. So there's going to be a lot of reps, a lot of practice without weight to get you moving the way you're supposed to, so you naturally move the way you're supposed to. Then we're going to start adding speed. Okay, so you have to be really, really good at what you're doing before we add strength and speed and really ratcheting up that intensity. And it seems like that's going to be a long time from now, but it's really not. Usually you can tell the difference in an air squat when somebody starts from the very first one they do to the last one they do at the end of the workout. You've already gotten that much better. So it'll come. So you realize that it's a little bit of a journey, but you'll get there. So we're going to add power and speed later. So we have to be proficient in that movement before we can add weight and that intensity. One of the other things to keep in mind is when we talk about range of motion, that just because you're flexible or inflexible, it doesn't mean you're stable through that entire range of motion. We've had folks that have been yoga people who have been extremely flexible and be able to squat, gymnasts as well, that can squat all their rear end all the way down to their heels, no problem, but you just put an unloaded bar on their back and all of a sudden they can only go this far because they're not stable through that range of motion. So just because you can hit that range of motion doesn't mean you're stable. So listen to your coaches. They'll tell you a good range of motion. We've had a lot of people just squat to boxes because we don't want them to go any deeper than they're going. So make sure that that's something you keep in mind as well.
Awesome. The last thing that we're going to touch on is the universal motor patterns, basically how they apply to life. When we go through all these movements here, think about how essential they are. And that's first and foremost, I think, with anything that you can put forth towards life in general. Essential. Here in the gym, we slow things down. It's a very controlled environment. And once you start establishing the technique and these movement patterns, it almost becomes second nature. Out in life, it's spontaneous. So there's no control or anything like that, but how it translates over is that you're more aware of your body and how to position it. Delaying decrepitude is a huge thing for a lot of people. Regaining loss of function, we'll have a lot of people come in with either tweaked up shoulders or bad knees, bad low backs, and they'll actually start regaining a lot of lost function they've had for many years. And then last but not least is it's also rehabilitative.
So if you have any old injuries or anything like that, that's really going to help you get through those. We're going to take you through the press and the front rack and some of the movements that goes on with those in just a second. All right, are we ready to overhead press, front rack, front squat thruster? That's what we're going over today. That probably all sounds a little odd to you, but by the time we're done, you're going to be ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is go over what our front rack position is and how we're going to start with an overhead press. What's the first thing you're going to make sure you do?
Midline.
Brace your midline, right? So if you need to go back through that, spread your feet apart, squeeze your butt cheeks, get your abs tight, neutral shoulders, head's neutral, let your butt cheeks relax. We're in a good neutral spine position. All right, so a front rack position is typically when we have a barbell is going to be across the front of your chest. We're not going to worry about barbells today. We're not going to worry about dumbbells today. In a minute, I'm going to give Darcy some real resistance in the form of these expo markers, but that's going to show us where we're going to be. So we're going to start with going ahead. Darcy's going to give herself 2 thumbs up. Who's cool?
I'm cool.
She's cool.
I'm
Okay, so this is actually a good front rack position right here. You can see the elbows are up nice and high. She's got her thumbs on the front of her shoulders. If I did put a barbell right across here, it would be right up nice and tight against her neck, and it would be sitting on the meat of her shoulders, and that would be a comfortable place to be. If she brought her elbows down a little bit in that front rack, now it's sitting on either her collarbones or down here across the front of her chest. Not nearly as comfortable. So up against the neck is where we want that barbell to be, and that is our front rack position. Now, if you are the camera, and Darcy had some laser beams attached to her elbows, she's going to shoot you right now, right through the camera with those laser beams. That's our front rack position, laser beams straight ahead. But if she's going to shoot your shoes, that's going to be our press position. So we don't have a lot of power when our elbows are up here, but we've got a good amount of power when you're here. So the front rack position for an overhead press, we're going to drop those elbows just a little bit so they are just in front of the hand. So if she turns sideways, you can see that here's the hands, here's the elbows. Now she's in a good pressing position. Go ahead and turn again. She wants those elbows to stay right inside of the framework of her body. If she gets those out, okay, that puts the shoulder in a bad position. We don't want to go there, so we want those nice and tight in here. Her movement is going to be with the shoulder press. She's going to go ahead and drive her hands straight up. And at the end, she's going to reach those hands as high as she can. And what that does, it puts us in, we call this active shoulder. You're going to hear a lot about active shoulder. When she turns to the side, you can see that you can see her ear through that side, and her hands are pressed up nice and high. Go ahead and turn from the back. And you can see she's that shoulder is in this nice extended position. That's what we want to get. So that is the active shoulder position. Go ahead and face the camera again. What we're going to do is go from here into that overhead position. So Darcy, why don't you give us about 5? Actually, 2 is good, and then we'll give you 3 with your resistance, making her work. So that's what it would look like with a barbell in the hand or a dumbbell in the hand. Okay, so that's shoulder press. Now, we're going to go through just a push press here real quick, and the only difference now, she's going to add her legs to this, so please face me. And let's just show them the dip here real quick. One of the things she wants to do is when we dip, she wants her torso to dip straight down. If she dips forward, what's going to happen is I'm going to dip forward, and now when I go to press, I'm going to push out. So I want to make sure that I dip down. We want her heels to stay on the floor, and she's actually going to use her heels to push into the floor and get the power that drives up. So the idea with the dip is I'm going to give the bar some momentum that I can use to push through with my elbow. So go ahead and show us a push press, Darcy. So she's going to dip, drive, and return, dip, drive, and return. So that, it looks really fantastic. So that is the push press. We're going to coach you through that when we have those in a movement. Go ahead and face the camera again, Darcy. Now she's going to go into a front rack position. So now her laser beams are pointing forward. This is a position we're going to use for what we call a front squat. So we're going to go through just like we did with the air squat that you learned last time, but now it'd be holding a barbell or holding dumbbells, or she could also possibly be holding a kettlebell right here at her chest. If it was a goblet squat. So she's gonna go right here. As she descends, her hips are gonna initiate first to go back, and that front squat is right here, and then she's right back up. You can tell we're nice and loose and warmed up for this video. And then come right back up. And that's what a front squat looks like. So if you hear the term front squat, that's what we're talking about. The last movement I want to tell you about today is something everyone just absolutely loves. They're always, Coach, can we do thrusters? I'd really like to do thrusters today. I always like to do thrusters. We're going to show you what that thruster is. So she's going to go right back into that front rack. So she's going to descend into a full squat. And now on the way up, she's going to go into a push press. Yep. So she's going to come up, and then her elbows are going to drop as she comes up. So she's going to come from here, her elbows are going to drop, and then she's going to use the momentum from the top of that squat, just like the push press, to go into a thruster. So go ahead and give us a thruster. There it is. And then she's going to descend and go right back into the next one. Again, fun exercise, extremely effective, extremely metabolic. You know when you've done them. And that's the thruster. And again, we'll coach you through those. We just wanted to let you know where it is and some key points to look at. See you in a couple days.